Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine standing in the cool grey hush just before sunrise in a small Judean village, sometime in the early 1st century. The sky is still heavy with night, yet a thin ribbon of pale gold is beginning to stretch across the eastern hills. You feel the ground beneath your bare feet packed hard by generations of footsteps. Dust clings to your skin like a second garment. The scent of animals drifts through the narrow lanes, mingling with smoke from a dying cooking fire. Somewhere a rooster calls with stubborn confidence, announcing a day that will bring both ordinary toil and quiet uncertainty. You are about to step into a world where childhood is not protected by soft walls or long seasons of play. Instead, it unfolds beneath the open sky among stone houses whose rough surfaces scratch your palms. You hear the distant murmur of women grinding grain, the rhythmic scrape of stone against stone echoing like a slow heartbeat. Your stomach tightens with hunger before your eyes are even fully open. Light creeps into the village, revealing low doorways, tangled cords of drying herbs, and the watchful gaze of elders who measure worth by endurance rather than age. This place exists at a crossroads of empires and beliefs. Judea lies under the shadow of Rome, yet its people cling fiercely to ancient traditions rooted in the Hebrew scriptures. Archaeological research has uncovered modest dwellings from this era, their earthen floors and clay ovens, confirming the simplicity that shaped daily existence. Nearby cities such as Jerusalem pulse with religious significance, while distant Mediterranean trade routes bring whispers of foreign customs and power struggles. Records confirm that children formed a vital part of household survival, contributing labour almost as soon as they could walk steadily. For you, morning begins not with leisurely stretching, but with an immediate sense of duty. A rough woolen tunic brushes your skin as you pull it on, still stiff with yesterday's sweat. The fabric scratches your neck. You glance towards the doorway where faint light outlines the shape of your mother. Her expression is already focused on tasks ahead. Oddly enough, some ancient writings suggest that children sometimes carried tiny oil lamps at dawn to guide older relatives through dim interiors. A curious footnote revealing how early responsibility could be expected. Outside the village stirs like a living creature. Sandals shuffle across packed earth. A donkey brays in protest as it is led toward a field. You follow your father, who does not pause to explain the day's plan. No agreement has been reached on whether ancient parents offered gentle encouragement or relied mostly on stern commands, but you sense that silence itself can be an instruction. You pick up a small basket, its woven reeds rough against your fingers, and begin gathering bits of kindling left from the previous night. The air grows warmer as the sun rises. Golden light spills over terraced hills, illuminating rows of olive trees, whose twisted trunks resemble old hands reaching toward heaven. You breathe in the scent of crushed leaves. Somewhere beyond the village, sheep bells chime faintly. Your mind drifts to the thought that perhaps other children in distant lands wake to different sounds, softer ones. Yet here each morning carries the same quiet lesson. Survival does not wait for youth to pass. A council decree from the broader Roman administration proves that taxation weighed heavily on local communities, shaping even the tasks given to children. You might help count olives or carry bundles of wood, small contributions that ease the burden on adults. One scandalous aside preserved in later commentaries hints that some children were known to sneak figs from communal stores, risking punishment for a taste of sweetness in an otherwise plain diet. Hunger sharpens both obedience and mischief. By mid-morning, dust coats your ankles like pale paint. You squat near the doorway, chewing slowly on a piece of coarse bread. Its texture is gritty, flecked with bits of husk that crunch softly between your teeth. You listen as elders speak in low tones about harvest prospects and rumours from Jerusalem. Scholars bicker over how much news from urban centres truly reached rural villages, yet you sense that even fragments of distant events can shape your imagination. Perhaps there are grand temples, bustling markets, and teachers whose voices carry hope. For now, though, your world is measured in footsteps between well and hearth. The day stretches ahead like an unrolled scroll. You feel both small and strangely alert, aware that every sound centre, touch is teaching you something. Childhood here is not a protected sanctuary, but a narrow path edged with expectation. Still, as sunlight dances across the stone walls, you notice a flicker of wonder stirring inside you. Could this ordinary morning hold unseen meaning? Could each chore become a quiet preparation for the future? You rise again, basket in hand, following the rhythm set by those who came before you. The village hums with life, and you move within it like a thread woven into an ancient tapestry. Oh. Your mind drifts from the brightening courtyard back into the dim interior of your home, where shadows still cling to the corners like stubborn memories. The low ceiling presses the warmth downward, carrying with it the smell of smoke and stored grain. You feel the closeness of family life in every breath you take. There are no private rooms here. No doors to close against noise or judgment. Every action, every hesitation unfolds beneath the eyes of those who guide and command you. You sense your father's presence before you see him. The creak of his leather belt, the deliberate weight of his footsteps on the packed earth floor, signal authority more clearly than words. Household hierarchies shape your days as surely as the rising sun. In this world ages power, and obedience is a form of safety. Records confirm that extended families often live together in tight quarters, forming a living network of discipline and support. Research from institutions such as Oxford has interpreted these domestic arrangements as both protective and restrictive, offering children's security while limiting personal freedom. You kneel beside your mother as she kneads dough in a shallow bowl. The flour dust coats her hands like pale snow. She works in silence, her movements practiced and swift. You imitate her motions, pressing your small fingers into the sticky mass. The texture feels strangely alive, yielding beneath your touch. A curious footnote preserved in later rabbinic writings suggests that children were sometimes given small portions of dough to shape into simple figures, a playful moment tucked within the seriousness of daily labour. Yet even this brief amusement is watched carefully, as wasted grain could mean hunger later. Outside, the voices of relatives weave through the morning air. An uncle argues about the repair of a wall. A grandmother mutters prayers under her breath. You feel yourself standing at the centre of a web of expectations. Scholars still debate whether emotional warmth was openly expressed in such households or concealed beneath ritual formality. You notice that affection is rarely spoken aloud. Instead, it appears in subtle gestures. A piece of bread placed in your hand before others eat. A blanket pulled closer around your shoulders on cold nights. You follow your father into the yard where he inspects tools leaning against the wall. He shows you how to grip a wooden handle properly, guiding your fingers with a firmness that borders on impatience. The rough grain of the wood presses into your palm. You nod, absorbing the lesson without complaint. A decree from local village councils proves that children were expected to learn practical skills early, ensuring that family trades continued across generations. Your small successes bring a fleeting nod of approval. Your mistakes are met with silence that feels heavier than scolding. Oddly enough, some travellers' accounts mention children being sent on errands beyond the safety of their homes, navigating winding paths alone. This scandalous aside hints at the trust placed in youth, but also at the risks they faced. You imagine yourself walking those paths, heart pounding, eyes alert for strangers or sudden danger. Responsibility here grows like a tree, rooted deep and spreading wide before you realize its weight. What? At midday, the sun pours into the courtyard with unrelenting brilliance. Heat shimmers above the stones. You sit beside your siblings, sharing a thin meal, while listening to elders discuss the ever-present shadow of Roman rule. Arguments split along different lines when scholars attempt to reconstruct how much political awareness children possessed. Some believe you would have understood little beyond the sight of soldiers. Others suggest that even whispered complaints about taxes and decrees shaped young minds. You watch your older brother practice tying knots for securing livestock. His movements are swift and confident. A spark of rivalry flickers within you. You try to copy him, fumbling at first. Laughter erupts, sharp but not cruel. In this moment, you sense that family bonds are woven from both competition and quiet loyalty. One scandalous aside in ancient commentary even describes siblings staging mock disputes to prepare for adult responsibilities, transforming play into rehearsal for survival. As afternoon fades toward evening and you help gather water from the village well, the rope burns slightly against your hands. The bucket rises slowly, heavy with the promise of life. You realize that your worth is measured not by dreams or talents, but by the strength you bring to shared burdens. This understanding settles over you like the cooling dusk. Yet within the strict order of household authority, you also find a strange comfort. Your place is defined. Your path, though narrow, is clear. You lie down that night listening to the murmur of voices fading into sleep. The scent of oil lamps lingers in the air. You wonder if somewhere beyond these walls, other children lie awake with similar thoughts. Perhaps they too feel the silent pull of duty guiding them toward a future already shaped by unseen hands. You close your eyes, knowing that tomorrow will begin in the same way. The rooster will call, the dust will rise, and you will step once more into the circle of family bound by ties as enduring as the hills around you. For a moment, it feels as though your dreams dissolve into the smell of baking bread long before your eyes fully open. The dim interior of the house is already alive with quiet movement. A faint glow from the clay oven paints warm shapes across the walls. Your stomach tightens with a familiar emptiness that never quite disappears even after eating. Hunger is not an occasional visitor here. It is a steady companion walking beside you from dawn until night. You sit cross-legged on the earthen floor watching your mother break apart a small loaf with careful hands. The bread is coarse and uneven, baked from grain that has been ground by stone and mixed with just enough water to hold together. Records confirm that the diet of many rural families in Judea relied heavily on barley bread, olives, lentils, and occasional dried fish. Research interpreted by scholars from Yale has suggested that such simple meals provided minimal nourishment for growing bodies, shaping both physical endurance and quiet resilience in children like you. The first bite is always both relief and disappointment. The crust is tough, the inside dense and slightly bitter. You chew slowly, trying to make the taste last. A few olives lie in a shallow bowl, their dark skins glistening with oil. You take one, rolling it between your fingers before placing it on your tongue. The salty burst feels almost luxurious. A curious footnote in ancient writings hints that some families save the ripest olives for special occasions, allowing children to taste them only during sacred feasts or celebrations. This small act turns ordinary food into a memory worth carrying. Outside, the day brightens with harsh clarity. Sunlight reveals fields stretching toward the horizon, their soil cracked from weeks without rain. You follow your father into the open air, clutching a small bundle of herbs to chew later. The wind carries the scent of dry grass and distant animals. Scholars still argue whether frequent droughts were the greatest challenge to childhood survival, or whether social pressures weighed more heavily. You sense that both forces shape your life in ways you cannot fully name. At midday, hunger returns with stubborn persistence. Your family gathers beneath the thin shade of an olive tree. The ground beneath you is warm, textured with fallen leaves that crumble at your touch. A council record proves that even children were counted when calculating the distribution of grain taxes owed to local authorities. You listen as adults speak in hushed tone about harvest predictions and the price of flour in nearby markets. Their voices carry both hope and quiet fear. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside preserved in later commentaries tells of children sneaking into storage jars at night, scooping out handfuls of figs or nuts to satisfy gnawing hunger. You imagine the thrill of such a secret, the racing heartbeat, the risk of being discovered. Yet you also know the punishment would be swift. In this world, food is more than sustenance. It is a measure of discipline and trust. As afternoon heat presses down like a heavy blanket, you help carry water from the well. The rope scrapes your palms, leaving faint lines that sting with each movement. You pause to sip from a shared cup, the cool liquid spreading through your body like sudden light. Arguments split along different lines when historians attempt to estimate how much water children consume daily. Some believe scarcity limited intake severely. Others suggest that careful rationing allowed families to maintain a fragile balance. You glance toward the hills where goats pick their way across rocky paths. A strange thought drifts through your mind. Do they ever feel hunger as sharply as you do? The question lingers unanswered. You brush dust from your knees and return to your tasks, aware that curiosity itself can be a quiet form of escape. By evening, the sky softens into shades of amber and violet. Smoke curls upward from cooking fires, carrying the scent of lentil stew simmering in clay pots. You sit beside your siblings, sharing another small portion of food. The taste is comforting, though never quite enough. You listen to elders recount stories of ancient ancestors who wandered deserts sustained only by faith and sparse provisions. These tales weave endurance into your imagination, teaching you that hunger can be both a trial and a lesson. A mainstream historical observation drawn from archaeological findings reveals grinding stones worn smooth by centuries of you silent witnesses to the daily effort required simply to eat. You run your fingers across such a stone in your own home, feeling the cool surface beneath your skin. It seems to hold echoes of every meal prepared before yours. Night settles gently across the village. The air cools and stars begin to emerge one by one. You lie down on a woven mat, your stomach still faintly hollow, yet your mind filled with images of bred olives and distant harvests. No agreement has been reached on whether children learned to accept hunger as inevitable, or whether they dreamed constantly of abundance. Perhaps both truths exist together. As sleep approaches, you feel the rhythm of your breathing slow. Tomorrow will bring the same cycle of labour and small portions, the same quiet determination to endure. Yet within that repetition there is a hidden strength forming. You sense it in the steady beat of your heart, in the way your hands grow more skilled each day. Hunger shapes you, but it does not define you entirely. Somewhere beyond the horizon, fields will one day turn green again. You close your eyes, listening to the soft crackle of dying embers. The taste of salt and grain lingers on your tongue like a promise that life, though uncertain, continues to unfold. In your ears, the echo of grinding stones fades into the lighter sounds of afternoon, and for a fleeting moment the world feels almost gentle. The harsh brightness of the sun softens as clouds drift across the sky like pale veils. You find yourself drawn away from chores toward a narrow strip of open ground between houses, a place where children gather when watchful adults are busy with heavier tasks. Dust rises around your ankles with each step, swirling in tiny golden storms. Here play is not announced or scheduled, it simply appears like a sudden breeze. You crouch beside a cluster of smooth pebbles, their surfaces warmed by hours of sunlight. Your fingers trace their rounded edges. You and the other children arrange them into small piles, inventing rules as you go. Perhaps one stone represents a goat, another a merchant travelling from a distant town. Records confirm that toys in this era were rarely crafted objects. Instead, imagination transformed ordinary materials into companions of brief delight. Archaeological discoveries of carved bone dice and simple clay figurines hint at the creativity children summoned from scarcity. Laughter breaks free from your chest, surprising you with its brightness. It echoes against stone walls, mingling with the chirp of birds perched on rooftops. For a while, the weight of responsibility lifts. A curious footnote in ancient commentary even describes children drawing shapes in the dirt to mark imaginary boundaries, turning open space into kingdoms and battlefields. You join in scratching lines with a stick, feeling a strange sense of control in shaping the game's invisible world. Yet danger lingers at the edge of every joyful moment. You glance towards the narrow lane where strangers sometimes pass. Scholars still debate whether rural children were constantly supervised or granted surprising freedom of movement. You sense both truths in your own experience. Adults call your name if you stray too far, yet there are hours when you roam with only instinct as your guide. The thrill of that independence sharpened your awareness. Every sound becomes a signal. Every shadow might conceal a story. You decide to play a running game, darting between low walls and stacks of firewood. The rough surfaces scrape your palms when you stumble, leaving faint lines that sting. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside preserved in later writings tells of children daring one another to climb rooftops or leap across narrow alleys, or testing courage in ways that alarmed elders. You imagine yourself balancing on a high ledge, heart pounding like a drum. The thought is both terrifying and irresistible. A mainstream historical observation drawn from comparative research at Stanford suggests that physical play helped build endurance essential for adult labor. Without formal training grounds or organized sports, these spontaneous games strengthened muscles and sharpened reflexes. You feel this truth in your own body as you run until breath burns in your chest, sweat beads along your forehead, catching the light like tiny jewels. Soon a younger child begins to cry after tripping on a loose stone. You kneel beside him, brushing dust from his tunic. The scent of earth rises sharply, mingling with the faint sweetness of crushed herbs nearby. Arguments split along different lines when historians consider how children comforted one another in societies shaped by strict hierarchies. Some believe empathy flourished quietly among peers. Others suggest competition overshadowed tenderness. You find yourself offering a shared olive from your pouch, a small gesture that feels both natural and brave. The game resumes slower now as shadows lengthen across the ground. A flock of sheep passes through the village bells, chiming softly. Their presence draws your attention away from play. Responsibility calls again, subtle yet persistent. You know that soon you will be needed to help guide them toward a pen or gather stray twigs for the evening fire. Childhood here is not a separate realm. It is interwoven with duty, each thread visible even during moments of laughter. As the sun begins its descent, the sky shifts into deeper shades of gold and rose. You sit with the other children on a low wall, sharing stories of imagined adventures. One claims to have seen a fox stealing figs from a garden. Another insists that a travelling storyteller once promised hidden treasures beyond the hills. Scholars bicker over whether such tales were passed down as entertainment or as moral lessons wrapped in wonder. To you, they are simply sparks that light the dim corners of ordinary days. A curious footnote from later folklore even recounts games involving shadow chasing at twilight, when children tried to outrun the lengthening shapes cast by their own bodies. You stand and test this idea, stepping quickly as your silhouette stretches across the ground. For a heartbeat, you feel as though you are racing time itself. The sensation is exhilarating and strange. Evening approaches with gentle insistence. Voices of adults drift through the air, calling you back to tasks unfinished. You rise reluctantly, brushing dust from your knees. The memory of laughter lingers like a soft glow within you. You realize that play, though brief, leaves behind a quiet strength. It teaches you to imagine possibilities beyond the narrow paths set before you. As you return to the courtyard, the scent of lentils simmering greets you like a familiar friend. The day's final light flickers across stone walls, turning them momentarily luminous. You carry within you the echo of games made from stones and shadows, proof that, even in a world of hardship, joy can appear unexpectedly. It may fade quickly, but its presence shapes you in ways that no decree or command can erase. Night gathers around the village once more. You lie down on your mat muscles, pleasantly sore from running. Your mind drifts through images of pebbles, laughter, and twilight silhouettes. Tomorrow will bring new duties, new challenges. Yet you fall asleep knowing that somewhere between work and rest there will always be space for the quiet miracle of play. Your mind drifts from the fading glow of twilight into the gentle murmur of voices gathering in the courtyard. The night air carries the scent of cooling stone and crushed mint leaves. Somewhere nearby, a small oil lamp flickers its flame, dancing in response to each passing breeze. You sit close to the warmth of family, aware that learning here does not come from scrolls neatly arranged on desks or teachers standing at the front of bright rooms. It unfolds through listening, watching, and repeating until knowledge settles into your bones. You lean against a low wall as an elder begins to speak. His voice is slow and deliberate, weaving stories of ancestors who walked deserts guided only by faith and stubborn endurance. You picture endless stretches of sand beneath a blazing sky. Records confirm that oral tradition served as the primary means of education for many children in Judea, shaping memory as a vital skill. Research interpreted by scholars from Cambridge has suggested that repetition and rhythm helped young listeners retain sacred narratives with remarkable precision. The elder's swati rise and fall like distant waves. You find yourself mouthing phrases along with him, tasting the shape of ancient names on your tongue. A curious footnote preserved in rabbinic commentary hints that children sometimes competed to recite passages without error, turning learning into a subtle contest of pride. You feel a flicker of that same determination now. When the story ends, you whisper its opening lines again, afraid they might slip away if not held tightly. Morning brings another lesson this time, outside beneath the open sky. You follow your father to a small plot of land where tools lie scattered among rows of young plants. He shows you how to loosen soil with careful strokes, guiding your hands until the motion becomes smooth and steady. The scent of earth rises around you, rich and slightly sweet. A decree from local administrative records proves that practical skills were often considered as essential as spiritual knowledge, ensuring that each generation could sustain the next. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside in ancient sources describes children who resisted such instruction slipping away to watch travelling entertainers or merchants instead. You imagine the pull of colourful fabrics and unfamiliar songs, the thrill of glimpsing a wider world. Yet duty keeps you rooted in place. You focus on the rhythm of the hoe, striking ground, feeling the vibration travel up your arms like a quiet message. At midday you join other children near the village well. Together you practice tying simple knots, braiding reeds and counting bundles of firewood. Scholars still debate whether informal peer teaching played a significant role in childhood development, or whether adult supervision dominated all learning. You sense that knowledge moves in many directions here. An older girl corrects your grip on the rope with a quick, confident gesture. You nod in gratitude, recognizing that wisdom can come from unexpected voices. A mainstream historical observation drawn from analysis at Harvard notes that literacy was limited for most rural children during this period. Scrolls were precious guarded objects often reserved for religious leaders or wealthy households. You glance toward the distant outline of Jerusalem, wondering what secrets might be written there in ink you cannot yet decipher. The thought stirs both curiosity and quiet longing. Later in the afternoon, a travelling craftsman arrives with a cart of wooden wares. He allows you to watch as he shapes a handle with practiced strokes, curls of pale shavings falling at his feet. The texture of the wood fascinates you. You reach out, tracing the smooth surface once he's finished. Arguments split along different lines when historians consider how exposure to such trades influenced a child's aspirations. Some suggest it sparked dreams of mobility and independence. Others believe it reinforced acceptance of inherited roles. As evening descends, you return home with new impressions swirling in your mind. Your mother asks you to recount the elder's story from the night before. You speak carefully, piecing together fragments of memory. Her nod of approval feels like sunlight breaking through clouds. A curious footnote from later tradition even recounts families rewarding accurate recitations with small treats, perhaps a handful of dates or a sip of sweetened wine. You imagine the taste rich and unexpected. The oil lamp glows softly as darkness deepens. You sit near its flickering light, repeating lessons under your breath. Words become companions in the quiet hours, guiding you toward a sense of belonging within a history far older than yourself. No agreement has been reached on whether such early immersion in tradition limited personal exploration or provided a foundation of strength. You feel both possibilities resting gently within you. When sleep finally approaches, it carries with it the echoes of voices, the rhythm of tools, and the promise of knowledge slowly unfolding. Tomorrow you will learn something new, perhaps a prayer, a skill, or a story whispered by wind across the hills. Education here is not confined to walls or schedules. It lives in every gesture, every shared moment, every careful repetition beneath the open sky. You close your eyes, aware that even in dreams you continue to gather fragments of understanding. Each lesson shapes the path ahead, preparing you for responsibilities not yet fully imagined. Somewhere beyond the darkness, another elder is speaking. Another child is listening, and the ancient chain of learning stretches onward without end. For a moment, it feels as though the warmth of the oil lamp has barely faded when a sharp cough breaks the silence of night. You open your eyes to the uneasy rhythm of breathing somewhere close by. The room is dark except for a thin line of moonlight slipping through the doorway. Your heart begins to beat faster. Illness moves quietly in this world, like a shadow crossing the threshold without warning. You sit up on your woven mat, feeling the rough fibers press into your skin. The air carries the faint scent of damp earth and sweat. Someone shifts beside you. Another cough follows, deeper this time, and you sense the tension that fills the small space. Records confirm that disease was one of the most constant threats to childhood survival in the ancient Near East. Archaeological studies of burial sites reveal the fragile remains of young bodies, silent testimony to the dangers that lingered beyond the reach of care or remedy. Morning arrives slowly, heavy with worry. Your mother presses her hand to a sibling's forehead, measuring heat without tools or certainty. You watch her face, searching for reassurance. Research interpreted by scholars from Yale has suggested that families relied on a mixture of herbal knowledge, prayer, and traditional remedies when sickness struck. You're sent to gather bitter leaves from the edge of the village. Their sharp scent fills your nostrils as you crush them between your fingers. The sun rises indifferent to human fear. You kneel beside a clay bowl while your mother prepares an infusion. The liquid darkens as it steeps, releasing an earthy aroma that lingers in your throat. A curious footnote in ancient medical texts even mentions children being given small amulets to wear during illness, believed to guard against unseen forces. You imagine such a charm resting against your chest, cool and reassuring. Outside's daily tasks continue. A donkey brays. A neighbour calls out instructions to his sons. Yet you feel as though the world has narrowed to the slow rise and fall of your siblings' breathing. Scholars still debate whether high child mortality shaped emotional bonds in ways modern minds struggle to grasp. Some argue that constant exposure to loss hardened hearts. Others believe it deepened compassion and spiritual reflection. You sense both currents within your own thoughts, pulling in opposite directions. At midday, a travelling healer passes through the village. His arrival stirs a quiet ripple of hope. He carries bundles of dried roots and a staff worn smooth by many journeys. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside, preserved in later commentary, claims that some healers exaggerated their skills to gain food or shelter. You watch carefully as he examines the patient, murmuring words you cannot fully understand. His touch is gentle, his expression grave. A mainstream historical observation drawn from research at Stanford notes that communities often relied on collective knowledge rather than formal medicine. Women shared remedies across generations. Elders remembered which herbs soothed fever or eased pain. You realize that healing here is as much a communal act as a practical one. Neighbors bring small offerings. Someone lights incense, its sweet smoke curling toward the ceiling like a silent prayer. As afternoon shadows lengthen, the fever begins to recede. Relief spreads through the household like a cool breeze after oppressive heat. Arguments split along different lines when historians consider how much recovery was attributed to treatment versus the natural course of illness. You simply feel gratitude, deep and wordless. You help carry fresh water to the bedside, careful not to spill a drop. Later you walk beyond the village with a basket of discarded herbs. The path is narrow-edged with thorny shrubs that scratch your legs. You pause beside a cluster of wildflowers, their colours bright against the dusty ground. The fragility of life becomes suddenly vivid to you. A curious footnote from ancient folklore even tells of children making small offerings to protective spirits after surviving sickness gestures, meant to honour the thin boundary between danger and safety. Evening settles with a gentle calm. The sky glows in soft hues of amber and violet. You sit near the doorway listening to crickets sing. The memory of fear lingers, yet it no longer overwhelms you. Instead, it sharpens your awareness of each ordinary sound, each steady heartbeat. No agreement has been reached on whether such experiences accelerated maturity in ancient children, but you feel a subtle shift within yourself. You lie down as night deepens the woven mat familiar beneath your back. The scent of herbs still clings to your hands. Somewhere nearby a soft voice whispers a prayer of thanks. You close your eyes knowing that illness may return at any time. Yet you also carry the quiet knowledge that survival is possible, that care can be found in shared effort and stubborn hope. Sleep comes slowly like a cautious friend. Your dreams drift through images of moonlit rooms, bitter leaves, and the reassuring touch of a healer's hand. In this world, fragility is a constant teacher. It reminds you that each dawn is both a gift and a challenge. You breathe deeply, feeling the rhythm of life continue fragile yet persistent beneath the endless turning of stars. Your mind drifts from the quiet relief of recovery into the steady rhythm of morning prayers rising across the village. The first light touches the rooftops with a pale glow, and you hear voices murmuring sacred words before the day has fully begun. The sound moves through the cool air like ripples on still water. You feel drawn toward it not by command alone, but by a deeper sense that faith here is woven into every breath you take. You step outside and notice how the ground still holds the chill of night. The texture of dust beneath your feet feels familiar grounding. A faint scent of incense lingers from a neighbour's doorway, sweet and smoky. Records confirm that religious observance shaped daily life in Judea with remarkable intensity. Archaeological findings from synagogues and household shrines suggest that prayer was not confined to grand temples, but practiced within ordinary spaces, guiding both adults and children through cycles of work and rest. You follow your family toward a small gathering place near the edge of the village. It is not large or decorated with splendour. Simple stone benches form a circle, and a worn scroll rests in the hands of an elder. Research interpreted by scholars from Oxford has suggested that communal recitation strengthened identity among scattered Jewish communities living under foreign rule. You sit quietly listening as familiar passages unfold in measured tones. The cadence of sacred language fills your ears steady and reassuring. You notice how even the youngest children attempt to echo certain phrases, their voices soft yet determined. A curious footnote preserved in later tradition hints that some children learn to sing fragments of psalms while helping with chores, turning labour into a form of devotion. You imagine yourself humming such melodies while gathering olives or drawing water, faith becoming a companion rather than an obligation. Outside the gathering circle, the world continues its restless motion. A merchant's cart rattles along the distant road. Sheep bells chime in uneven rhythm. Scholars still debate whether constant religious practice provided comfort in uncertain times or reinforced social boundaries that limited personal expression. You sense both currents shaping your thoughts. Prayer offers a quiet refuge, yet it also reminds you of the expectations placed upon your growing mind. As the sun climbs higher, your father explains the significance of upcoming festival days. He traces patterns in the dust with a stick illustrating journeys of ancestors and promises of deliverance. A decree from local leadership proves that communal observances were carefully coordinated, aligning households with shared calendars of fasting and celebration. You feel the weight of belonging, the awareness that your actions contribute to something larger than yourself. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside recorded in ancient commentary tells of children who grew restless during long readings, slipping outside to chase birds or explore hidden corners. You smile at the thought, recognizing your own flicker of impatience, yet you remain seated, fingers tracing the rough edge of the stone bench. Discipline here is not always enforced by stern words. Sometimes it is sustained by the quiet gaze of those who trust you to remain. Later in the afternoon, you help prepare a small offering of oil and grain. The scent of crushed herbs fills the air, mingling with the warmth of sunlight. A mainstream historical observation drawn from research at Stanford notes that ritual practices often involved sensory elements designed to reinforce memory and reverence. You feel this truth as you touch the smooth surface of a clay vessel, its coolness and gentleness contrasting with the heat of your palm. Arguments split along different lines when historians consider how deeply children internalize theological concepts. Some suggest faith was absorbed gradually through repetition and example. Others believe moments of crisis such as illness or loss sharpen spiritual awareness. You reflect on the recent fear in your own household, recognizing how prayer became both shield and solace. As evening approaches, the sky turns a gentle shade of gold. Families gather again to recite blessings before the simple meal. Voices rise together, forming a fragile harmony that seems to steady the world. A curious footnote from later folklore even recounts children inventing their own whispered prayers at bedtime, blending tradition with personal hopes. You find yourself doing the same, shaping words that feel both ancient and new. Night settles softly across the village. Oil lamps flicker like small stars brought down to earth. You lie on your mat, listening to distant chanting carried by the wind. No agreement has been reached on whether such constant exposure to ritual limited youthful imagination or enriched it with layers of meaning. For you, the experience feels like standing within a vast story, still unfolding. You close your eyes, sensing the presence of generations who have spoken these same prayers. Faith surrounds you like a cloak, sometimes comforting, sometimes heavy with expectation. Yet as sleep draws near, you feel a quiet peace settle over your thoughts. Tomorrow will bring new tasks, new questions, but the rhythm of devotion will remain guiding your steps through both light and shadow. For a moment, it feels as though the rhythm of prayer still hums inside your chest when the sharp brightness of morning calls you back to labour. The sky is clear, a pale blue stretching endlessly above the terraced hills. You step outside with stiff limbs, your muscles reminding you that rest here is never long enough to soften the demands of the day. Childhood passes quickly in this place. Before innocence has time to bloom, fully work has already begun to shape your hands. You follow your father along a narrow path lined with stones bleached white by sun and wind. The ground crunches beneath your sandals. A dry breeze lifts strands of your hair, carrying with it the faint smell of livestock and distant cooking fires. Records confirm that many children in first-century Judea were expected to contribute to family labour as soon as they could carry simple tools or manage small animals. Research interpreted by historians at Cambridge suggests that early participation in work was seen not as exploitation, but as preparation for survival within a demanding environment. You reach the edge of a field where olive trees cast uneven patches of shade. Your task today is simple yet relentless. Gather fallen branches, stack them neatly, carry them toward the storage area near the house. The wood feels rough against your palms, leaving tiny splinters that sting until you learn how to grip more carefully. A curious footnote preserved in later agricultural writings hints that children sometimes competed to collect the largest bundles, turning necessity into a quiet contest of strength. The sun climbs higher. Heat presses down like an invisible weight. You pause to wipe sweat from your forehead, tasting the salt on your lips. Scholars still debate whether such physical exertion during childhood strengthened resilience or caused lasting strain on growing bodies. You sense both possibilities in the ache that settles across your shoulders. Yet there is also pride in completing each task. Your father's brief nod of approval feels like a rare and precious reward. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside recorded in village lore tells of children who occasionally pretended to work while hiding in the shade watching clouds drift across the sky. You glance upward, now noticing how the shapes shift slowly, forming images of animals and distant mountains. For a heartbeat, your mind wanders. What might life be like beyond these fields? Could there be places where children spend more time dreaming than lifting wood? A mainstream historical observation drawn from research at Stanford notes that apprenticeships often began early with boys learning trades such as carpentry or masonry, while girls absorbed skills of weaving, cooking, and household management. You remember watching a craftsman shape a handle days before. The memory returns like a spark of curiosity. You try to imitate the careful movements you saw arranging branches with deliberate precision. Even in repetitive work, there is space for learning. By midday, the air shimmers with heat. You sit beneath the twisted trunk of an olive tree, sharing a small portion of bread with your siblings. Dust clings to your skin like a second garment. Arguments split along different lines when historians consider how childhood labour influenced social mobility. Some believe it bound individuals to inherited roles. Others suggest it provided practical knowledge that could open unexpected paths. You choose slowly, pondering the thought without fully understanding its weight. The afternoon brings a different task. You're asked to help guide a small flock of goats along the hillside. Their hooves strike stone with sharp clicks. You move carefully, calling out in a low voice to keep them together. A curious footnote in ancient pastoral texts even describes the children developing unique whistles or songs to manage animals, blending work with a subtle form of creativity. You test a simple tune, now surprised when one goat responds by turning toward you. As the sun begins its descent, shadows stretch across the landscape. The sky softens into warm tones of amber and rose. Your arms ache from effort, yet your mind feels strangely clear. No agreement has been reached on whether such early responsibility shortened the carefree years of youth or deepened appreciation for moments of rest. You sense both truths coexisting like day and night. Returning to the village, you carry your final bundle of wood with steady determination. The scent of cooking lentils drifts through the air, promising comfort after labour. Neighbours greet you with brief smiles, acknowledging your growing place within the community. Work here is not merely a duty. It is a language spoken through movement shaping identity long before words can fully express it. Evening settles gently. You sit near the doorway watching flames flicker in the clay oven. The warmth soothes your tired muscles. A quiet satisfaction settles over you, mingled with the lingering awareness that tomorrow will demand the same strength. Childhood in this world is measured not by years, but by the weight you can carry and the skill you can show. You lie down beneath the vast canopy of stars, feeling the rough mat beneath your back. Your thoughts drift between fatigue and faint wonder. Somewhere within you a question stirs. Will there come a day when work feels lighter? Or will you simply grow strong enough to carry it without noticing? Sleep approaches with gentle persistence. The rhythm of labour still echoes through your body, yet it no longer feels like a burden alone. It has become part of the quiet story unfolding within you. Your mind drifts from the steady ache of labour into the sharp clatter of unfamiliar footsteps echoing through the village. The sound is different from the soft shuffle of sandals or the patient tread of livestock. It is heavier, deliberate, carrying with it the faint metallic rattle of armour and equipment. You feel a ripple of unease pass through the morning air before you even see the source. You step towards the edge of the narrow lane, blinking against the bright sunlight. A small group of Roman soldiers appears, their red-trimmed garments vivid against the muted tones of stone and dust. Their helmets catch the light, flashing briefly like signals from another world. Records confirm that Judea in the 1st century existed under firm imperial control with military presence woven into everyday life. Research interpreted by historians at Princeton suggests that such encounters could shape a child's understanding of power long before political ideas were fully grasped. You watch as the soldiers move with practiced confidence, speaking in a language that feels both sharp and distant to your ears. Their sandals strike the ground with a steady rhythm, unlike the quieter pace of villagers. A curious footnote preserved in regional chronicles even describes children mimicking these marching steps in play, turning intimidation into imitation as a way of processing fear. You find yourself tapping your foot unconsciously, testing the cadence of their movement. Your father places a firm hand on your shoulder, guiding you back from the path. His touch carries a silent warning. Scholars still debate how much hostility or acceptance characterized local reactions to Roman authority. Some sources suggest open resentment simmered beneath outward compliance. Others argue that daily coexistence fostered complex interactions of trade negotiation and occasional curiosity. You sense that both currents flow quietly through the village. At midday, a tax collector arrives accompanied by a single guard. The man carries a scroll and a small set of scales tools that seem as powerful as any weapon. A council record proves that taxation under Roman administration placed considerable strain on rural households, shaping decisions about harvest distribution and labour. You listen as elders speak in low-measured tones, their faces composed but tense. Even without understanding every word, you feel the gravity of the moment. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside recorded in later commentary recounts children hiding behind walls to watch such exchanges, whispering exaggerated tales about soldiers' strength or cruelty. You find yourself doing the same now, peering through a gap in the stones. The guard's shadow stretches across the ground like a dark line dividing worlds. For a heartbeat, fear tightens your chest, then curiosity follows close behind. A mainstream historical observation drawn from analysis at Stanford notes that imperial presence often introduced new goods, languages, and customs into local communities. You notice the soldier's belt decorated with small metal studs. The craftsmanship fascinates you. You imagine touching the cool surface, wondering how such items are made. Arguments split along different lines when historians consider whether these glimpses of foreign culture sparked admiration or deepened resistance among the young. Later in the afternoon, you accompany your older brother to the hillside. From this vantage point, the road below appears like a pale ribbon winding through the landscape. A line of travellers moves slowly along it, their figures tiny against the vastness of the terrain. Among them you spot another Roman patrol. The sight feels less startling now, more like a recurring symbol in the tapestry of daily life. A curious footnote in ancient travel accounts even describes children learning to identify the rank of soldiers by observing subtle differences in their attire, turning observation into a quiet skill. As the sun begins its descent, the sky softens into warm shades of gold and rose. You sit on a flat stone tracing patterns in the dust with a twig. No agreement has been reached on whether such early exposure to imperial authority fostered resignation or ignited dreams of change. You sense that our questions are forming within you, though you cannot yet shape them into words. Returning to the village, you pass a small group of adults discussing rumours of unrest in distant towns. Their voices carry both caution and determination. You wonder how these conversations will shape your future. Will you one day stand among them weighing choices that seem far beyond your current reach? The thought feels both thrilling and heavy. Evening settles with quiet grace. Cooking fires flicker to life, their smoke curling upward like signals to the darkening sky. You sit beside your family, sharing a simple meal, while listening for the faint echo of marching feet beyond the hills. The presence of Rome feels like a distant thunder that never fully fades. It shapes your world in subtle ways, influencing not only the burdens your family carries, but also the dreams that begin to stir in your heart. You lie down beneath the canopy of stars, your mind replaying the image of polished helmets and disciplined strides. Sleep comes slowly, filled with visions of roads leading to unknown places. Somewhere beyond the village, power moves in ways you cannot yet understand. Yet even here within the quiet circle of home, its shadow stretches long across your childhood. You close your eyes, aware that tomorrow may bring another glimpse of that distant empire. Each encounter adds a new thread to the story unfolding within you, weaving fear, curiosity, and resilience into the fabric of your growing life. For a moment it feels as though the distant echo of marching feet fades into the rising hum of excitement that moves through the village like a sudden change in wind. The air itself seems lighter. You wake before dawn, not from hunger or duty this time, but from the sound of voices filled with anticipation. Today is not an ordinary day. Today is a festival. You step outside into the cool blue hush of early morning. Oil lamps flicker in doorways, casting soft halos of gold on the stone walls. Women carry baskets filled with carefully prepared food. Men speak in brighter tones than usual. The scent of fresh bread mingles with crushed herbs and faint curls of incense. Records confirm that religious festivals in first-century Judea marked crucial moments of communal identity, offering temporary relief from the monotony and hardship of daily labour. Research interpreted by historians at Oxford suggests that such gatherings reinforced social bonds and renewed spiritual hope among all ages. You feel your heart quicken as you join the slow procession toward a nearby gathering place. Your tunic has been brushed clean. Your hair is smoothed as neatly as possible. A curious footnote preserved in later writings hints that children sometimes received small tokens or ornaments during feast days, simple beads or coloured threads worn with pride. You glance at your wrist, imagining what it might feel like to carry such a visible sign of celebration. As the sun rises, the village transforms. Music begins softly, the rhythmic tapping of small drums accompanied by voices singing ancient melodies. You clap your hands in time, laughter bubbling up despite your usual reserve. Scholars still debate whether festival joy fully erased the memory of hardship or merely covered it like a thin veil. You sense that both truths exist together, creating a fragile balance between gratitude and longing. Food appears in greater abundance than on ordinary days. A bowl of stewed lentils flavoured with rare spices is passed from hand to hand. The taste is rich, almost overwhelming. A council record proves that families often saved their finest provisions for sacred observances, ensuring that even the youngest members experienced moments of fullness and delight. You eat slowly, savouring each bite as though storing the sensation for leaner times ahead. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside in ancient commentary describes children sneaking away during festivals to watch travelling performers or acrobats who sometimes accompanied large gatherings. You wander toward the edge of the crowd, now drawn by a burst of applause. A man balances on a wooden beam, his movements fluid and daring. Your breath catches in wonder. For a heartbeat, the boundaries of your world seem to expand. A mainstream historical observation drawn from research at Stanford notes that festivals often included public readings and teachings, blending entertainment with instruction. You find yourself seated among other children as an elder recounts stories of deliverance and promise. The words rise like birds into the bright sky. Arguments split along different lines when historians consider whether such narratives inspired genuine optimism or served primarily to maintain social cohesion. You listen intently, feeling hope stir in quiet corners of your mind. As afternoon unfolds, games and friendly competitions fill the open spaces. You join a circle of children tossing pebbles into clay pots, cheering when one lands perfectly inside. The laughter feels different today, less guarded. A curious footnote from later folklore even recounts young participants crafting crowns of woven grass to imitate kings or heroes from sacred tales. You gather a handful of long stems and twist them into a rough circle, placing it on your head with shy pride. The sky deepens into warm hues of amber and crimson as evening approaches. Fires are lit, their flames dancing in celebration. Families share stories while musicians play gentle melodies that seem to linger in the air long after the final note. No agreement has been reached on whether the emotional lift of festivals had lasting effects on childhood development or faded quickly beneath the return of daily struggle. You suspect that the memory itself becomes a quiet source of strength. Returning home, you carry with you the scent of incense and the echo of song. Your steps feel lighter despite the long day. Even the rough stones beneath your feet seem less harsh. You sit near the doorway watching sparks drift upward into the darkening sky. The festival has offered a glimpse of another rhythm of life, one where joy stands boldly beside hardship. You lie down later than usual, eyes still wide with lingering excitement. Images of music, laughter, and shared abundance swirl gently through your thoughts. Sleep comes slowly like a soft curtain, drawing closed. Somewhere in your dreams, the celebration continues, a reminder that even in a world shaped by duty and uncertainty, there are moments when light gathers and refuses to fade. As you drift deeper into rest, you hold on to that brightness. Tomorrow the tasks will return, hunger will knock again. Yet tonight your heart rests in the memory of drums and voices rising together beneath the ancient stars. Your mind drifts from the lingering glow of festival fires into the quieter murmur of a new morning. The village feels different now, as though the songs of celebration have left faint echoes in the air. You walk along the narrow path toward the well, your thoughts still coloured by memories of laughter and light. Yet another sound begins to draw your attention. It is a human voice, unfamiliar yet compelling, rising above the ordinary noise of daily life. You follow the sound until you reach a small crowd gathered beneath the shade of a fig tree. At its centre stands a wandering teacher, his face weathered by sun and travel. He speaks with calm intensity, his words weaving together parables about seeds, storms, and hidden treasure. Records confirm that itinerant preachers were a common presence in the region during the 1st century, moving from village to village to share interpretations of sacred law and visions of divine justice. Research interpreted by historians at Yale suggests that such figures often attracted both curiosity and controversy, especially among the young. You settle near the edge of the gathering gneiss, pressed into the warm dust. The teacher's voice flows like water over stone-shaping images in your mind. He speaks of children as symbols of humility and trust. A curious footnote preserved in later gospel commentary even recounts moments when teachers invited the youngest listeners to come closer, using their presence as living lessons. You feel a sudden mixture of pride and unease, uncertain whether to step forward or remain hidden among familiar faces. The sun climbs steadily, casting shifting patterns of light through the fig leaves. Scholars still debate whether the teachings of such figures sparked widespread social change or simply added new layers to existing traditions. You sense that something within you responds to the message, even if you cannot fully explain why. The idea that ordinary lives might hold sacred meaning lingers like a quiet question. At midday, the crowd disperses slowly. Some villagers exchange skeptical glances, others speak in hushed tones of hope. A council record proves that local authorities occasionally monitored these gatherings, wary of ideas that might challenge established order. You watch as the teacher accepts a piece of bread from a grateful woman, his gratitude expressed in a gentle nod. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside in ancient writings describes impostors who imitated prophetic speech to gain food or followers. The thought flickers briefly through your mind before fading. A mainstream historical observation drawn from analysis at Stanford notes that oral storytelling played a central role in shaping moral imagination during this era. You find yourself repeating one of the parables under your breath as you walk home. The rhythm of the words feels almost musical. Arguments split along different lines when historians consider how deeply such teachings influence children's long-term beliefs. Some suggest they planted seeds of personal transformation. Others argue that family traditions remain the strongest guiding force. Later in the afternoon, you help your older brother repair a broken fence. The scent of fresh-cut wood fills the air. You hammer small pegs into place, each strike echoing softly across the hillside. Yet your thoughts return again and again to the teacher's voice. A curious footnote in regional folklore even tells of children imitating sermons during play, taking turns delivering imaginary messages to amused companions. You try this quietly now, whispering phrases about faith and kindness to the wind. As evening approaches, the sky deepens into shades of rose and violet. Families gather for the final tasks of the day. You sit near the doorway listening to elders discuss the visitor. Some express admiration. Others caution against trusting strangers too quickly. No agreement has been reached on whether such encounters broadened youthful perspectives or introduced confusion into carefully ordered lives. You feel both excitement and uncertainty stirring within you. Night falls gently. The stars appear one by one like tiny lamps hung across the heavens. You lie on your mat, the woven fibres familiar beneath your back. The memory of the teacher's words drifts through your thoughts, mingling with the steady rhythm of crickets outside. You wonder if he will return, or if another voice will take his place beneath the fig tree. Sleep approaches with slow grace. In your dreams, parables unfold as living scenes. Seeds sprout into towering trees. Storms calm at a whispered command. You wake briefly in the darkness, heart filled with a strange mixture of comfort and curiosity. Somewhere beyond the quiet walls of your home, ideas are moving like unseen currents, shaping destinies yet to be revealed. You close your eyes once more, sensing that childhood itself is a kind of listening. Each story, each encounter adds depth to the path you are walking. Tomorrow may bring new teachers, new questions, new moments of wonder. For now you rest in the gentle knowledge that even the smallest voice can leave an enduring echo in the chambers of the soul. For a moment it feels as though the parables you heard beneath the fig tree still linger in the back of your mind when the laughter of other children draws you into the bright pulse of afternoon. The village seems alive with motion. Shadows stretch across the ground like long fingers pointing toward the future. You sense that something within you is changing, though you cannot yet name it. Childhood friendships begin to feel more complicated, touched by rivalry, pride, and quiet understanding. You join a small group gathered near a stack of sun-warmed stones. One boy boasts about how many goats he guided alone that morning. Another insists she can carry heavier bundles of wood than anyone else. Their voices rise and fall in playful challenge. Records confirm that social hierarchies often began forming early in ancient communities shaped by strength, skill, and family reputation. Research interpreted by historians at Harvard suggests that peer relationships during youth helped prepare individuals for adult roles in trade leadership or household management. You crouch beside them, feeling the gritty texture of our dust beneath your palms. A game begins without formal agreement. Pebbles are tossed toward a circle scratched into the ground. Each successful throw earns cheers or groans. A curious footnote preserved in later folklore even describes children using such contests to settle minor disputes, turning competition into a ritualized form of negotiation. You feel your heart quicken when your turn comes. The stone leaves your fingers with a smooth arc landing just inside the boundary. A ripple of admiration passes through the group, yet beneath the laughter, tension flickers. One child pushes another aside too roughly. A sharp word follows. Scholars still debate whether ancient childhood was marked by frequent conflict or whether cooperation dominated daily interactions. You sense both forces at play. Pride can rise like sudden heat, yet loyalty often follows close behind. When the pushed child begins to cry, you offer a hand to help him stand. The gesture feels instinctive, shaped by lessons you've absorbed from family and faith. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside in regional writings tells of children forming secret alliances or clubs, meeting at dusk to share whispered plans or imaginary adventures. The thought intrigues you. Later, you and two friends wander toward the edge of the village where tall grasses sway in the breeze. You speak of distant cities and travelling teachers. Dreams seem easier to voice here away from listening adults. A mainstream historical observation drawn from research at Stanford notes that adolescence often began earlier in ancient societies due to physical demands and cultural expectations. You feel this shift in subtle ways. Tasks that once seemed daunting now feel manageable. Conversations carry hints of responsibility. Arguments split along different lines when historians consider whether this early maturity limited emotional exploration or strengthened resilience. You suspect that both truths intertwine like roots beneath the soil. As afternoon light softens into warm gold, you help your older sister gather herbs along a narrow path. The scent of crushed leaves fills the air sharp and refreshing. She speaks of future duties of marriage arrangements and household skills. Her voice is calm, yet you sense the weight behind her words. A curious footnote from ancient legal texts even describes children being formally recognized as contributors to family decisions once they reach certain milestones of growth. You wonder when such recognition will come to you. Returning to the village, you pass a group of boys practicing with wooden staffs. Their movements are quick focused. They laugh between bouts, but there is seriousness in their eyes. No agreement has been reached on whether such play served purely recreational purposes or subtly prepared youth for conflict in uncertain times. You watch for a while, feeling both admiration and unease. Evening approaches with gentle grace. Fires flicker to life their glow, painting the stone walls in shades of amber. You sit with friends near the doorway of your home, sharing a final game of guessing stories from shadows cast on the ground. The shapes shift as flames dance, transforming into animals, heroes, and distant lands. A curious footnote in folklore even recounts children believing that shadows could reveal hidden truths about character or destiny. You laugh at the idea, yet a small part of you wonders. Night settles quietly. The air cools, carrying the distant hum of insects and the soft murmur of adult conversation. You lie down on your mat muscles, pleasantly tired. Thoughts of friendship and rivalry drift through your mind like leaves on water. You realize that growing awareness is both exciting and unsettling. Each new feeling adds depth to your understanding of the world. Sleep arrives slowly, bringing dreams of contests won and lost, of secret meetings in tall grass, of voices calling your name with both affection and expectation. Somewhere within you, the child who played freely among stones is giving way to someone more thoughtful, more alert. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new bonds, new questions. You close your eyes, sensing that the path ahead is widening even as it becomes more demanding. Friendship and rivalry are not opposites, but twin forces, shaping your journey toward adulthood. Beneath the vast canopy of stars, you rest in the quiet knowledge that every shared moment helps define who you are becoming. Your mind drifts from the warmth of evening laughter into the colder hush that sometimes settles over the village without warning. The morning sky is pale and still, yet something feels different. Voices are softer, movements are slower. You sense the change even before you understand its cause. Loss moves through this world as quietly as dawn touching lives, with a gentleness that can feel almost cruel. Oh. You follow your mother toward a small gathering near the edge of the houses. A woven cloth has been spread on the ground. Beneath it lies the still form of an elderly neighbour who once told stories beneath the fig tree. The scent of earth and myrrh hangs in the air. Records confirm that death was a familiar presence in ancient communities, shaping both ritual practice and emotional outlook. Archaeological studies of burial customs reveal simple graves often prepared quickly, reflecting both reverence and necessity. You stand at a respectful distance watching adults move with solemn purpose. Research, interpreted by historians at Oxford, suggests that children were often included in mourning rituals, learning early how to confront the reality of mortality. You feel a tightness in your chest, a mixture of fear and curiosity. A curious footnote preserved in later tradition even describes children placing small stones on graves as tokens of remembrance. You pick up a smooth pebble now, turning it slowly in your hand. The procession toward the burial place begins with quiet chanting. The rhythm is slow measured like the steady beat of a heart. Scholars still debate whether repeated exposure to death hardened emotional responses in youth or deepened spiritual awareness. You sense that grief here is not hidden but shared openly, woven into the fabric of daily existence. Tears fall, yet life continues its steady march. At midday, the sun shines with almost indifferent brilliance. You sit beneath an olive tree, tracing circles in the dust. A council record proves that communal support during times of loss helped maintain social stability, ensuring that no family faced hardship alone. You watch as neighbours bring food and water to the bereaved household. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside in ancient commentary recounts children playing quietly nearby during mourning gatherings, their laughter softened but not entirely silenced. The thought feels both strange and comforting. A mainstream historical observation drawn from research at Stanford notes that life expectancy during this era was significantly lower than in modern times, making encounters with death more frequent across all age groups. You reflect on this as you help carry bundles of herbs for a small memorial meal. The sharp fragrance fills your lungs, grounding you in the present moment. Arguments split along different lines when historians consider how such realities influence childhood dreams. Some believe ambition was tempered by awareness of fragility. Others suggest that resilience flourished precisely because uncertainty was constant. Later in the afternoon, you walk with your father along a narrow path beyond the village. The ground slopes gently downward toward a cluster of simple stone markers. He speaks softly about the cycles of life, his words measured and deliberate. A curious footnote from ancient philosophical writings even describes parents using moments of loss to teach moral lessons about humility and faith. You listen carefully, feeling both comforted and unsettled. As shadows lengthen, you return home with a new weight, resting quietly in your thoughts. The games of childhood feel more distant now, though their memory still glows faintly. No agreement has been reached on whether early confrontation with mortality accelerated maturity or left unseen wounds that shaped adult character. You sense that something within you has shifted like a door opening on a wider landscape. Evening descends with gentle grace. Fires are lit, their flickering light casting long patterns across the walls. You sit beside your sibling, sharing a simple meal in thoughtful silence. The absence of the neighbour's familiar voice echoes like an unanswered question. Yet the steady presence of family offers reassurance. Loss, you realise, does not stand alone. It is accompanied by care, by remembrance, by the quiet determination to continue. Night deepens. The stars appear one by one, bright against the velvet sky. You lie on your mat, listening to distant prayers carried on the wind. Images of the burial place drift through your mind, mingling with memories of laughter and festival song. Sleep approaches, slowly bringing dreams of paths that stretch beyond the horizon, and of voices calling from both past and future. You close your eyes, aware that childhood is not a sheltered garden, but a landscape shaped by both joy and sorrow. Each experience adds depth to the story unfolding within you. Tomorrow the sun will rise again, tasks will resume, and life will move forward with quiet persistence. Yet the memory of this day will remain, guiding you toward a deeper understanding of the fragile beauty that surrounds you. For a moment, it feels as though the memory of the burial stones still lingers in your thoughts when a different kind of whisper begins to travel through the village. It arrives not as a shout, but as a rumour carried on the wind. People speak in lowered voices. Some glance toward the road with expressions of wonder. Others shake their heads in cautious disbelief. You sense a quiet stirring of expectation that feels both thrilling and unsettling. You step outside into the soft light of early morning. Mist clings to the ground like a pale veil, blurring the edges of familiar shapes. The scent of damp earth rises with each breath. Records confirm that periods of social tension in first-century Judea often gave rise to hopes of divine intervention or political change. Research interpreted by historians at Princeton suggests that even children absorbed fragments of these hopes through overheard conversations and shared stories. You follow a group of villagers walking toward the hillside. Their pace is steady yet purposeful. A curious footnote preserved in later chronicles even describes children imagining miraculous events long before witnessing them, weaving rumours into vivid personal visions. You find yourself doing the same now. Your mind paints scenes of sudden healings of storms quieted by a single voice. The possibility of transformation feels almost tangible. At the crest of the hill, you pause to catch your breath. The view stretches wide before you. Terraced fields ripple like green waves. The distant road glimmers beneath the rising sun. Scholars still debate whether such landscapes inspired spiritual reflection or simply reminded inhabitants of the vastness beyond their control. You stand silently, feeling both small and strangely empowered by the horizon. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside in ancient commentary recounts children claiming to see signs in ordinary events. A flock of birds turning sharply in the sky, a sudden burst of light at sunset. You watch the movement of clouds, now wondering if they carry messages meant for attentive eyes. Your heart beats faster with the thrill of possibility. A mainstream historical observation drawn from research at Stanford notes that messianic expectations were not uncommon during periods of imperial domination. You hear adults discussing these ideas in hushed tones. Some speak of a future leader who will restore justice. Others warn against false hope. Arguments split along different lines when historians consider how deeply such beliefs influenced young imaginations. You feel both drawn to the promise of change and anchored by the familiarity of daily routines. Later in the afternoon, you wander with friends toward a narrow stream beyond the village. The water glints in the sunlight, cool and inviting. You toss pebbles into its gentle current, watching ripples spread outward. A curious footnote from folklore even tells of children making wishes upon flowing water, believing that distant rivers carried prayers to unseen realms. You close your eyes briefly, forming a silent wish you cannot fully articulate. As the sun begins its descent, the sky shifts into shades of amber and rose. Shadows stretch across the land like long paths leading into tomorrow. You sit beside your older brother, listening as he speaks of travelling traders who claim to have witnessed extraordinary acts in distant towns. No agreement has been reached on whether such stories were exaggerated or grounded in real events, yet their power lies not only in truth but in the dreams they awaken. Returning to the village, you notice how ordinary tasks continue unchanged. Bread must be baked, animals must be tended, fires must be lit. The contrast between daily necessity and whispered possibility creates a tension that hums quietly beneath every action. You help carry water from the well, feeling the rope burn against your hands. The sensation anchors you in the present, even as your thoughts wander toward imagined futures. Evening settles gently. Families gather near doorways, exchanging fragments of news and speculation. The scent of lentils and herbs drifts through the cooling air. You lie down later, staring up at the first stars appearing in the deepening sky. Their steady light offers reassurance amid uncertainty. A curious footnote in later spiritual writings even suggests that children sometimes interpreted constellations as maps guiding them toward destiny. You trace patterns in the darkness, wondering what path awaits you. Sleep approaches with slow grace. Dreams carry you across hills and rivers, through crowded marketplaces and quiet gardens. You see faces filled with hope, hear voices speaking of change that feels both distant and near. When you wake briefly in the night, the village is silent except for the rustle of wind through olive branches. You realize that expectation itself has become a companion shaping the way you look at each new day. You close your eyes once more, sensing that you stand at a threshold. Childhood is not yet finished yet. The horizon seems closer than before. Faith, fear, and possibility intertwine like threads in a tapestry still being woven. Tomorrow will bring its own revelations. For now you rest within the quiet promise that even the smallest life can be touched by forces larger than understanding. For a moment, it feels as though the whispers of change that stirred your thoughts on the hillside are still drifting through your mind when the final season of your childhood begins to unfold. The morning air carries a softness that seems almost reflective, as though the world itself is pausing to consider the passage of time. You step outside and notice how the familiar village appears slightly different. The same stones line the paths, the same olive trees sway in the breeze, yet your awareness has deepened, sharpening every sound, every scent, every glimmer of light. You walk slowly toward the well, feeling the cool rope slide through your fingers as you draw water. Records confirm that rites of passage in ancient Judean communities were often subtle rather than ceremonious, marked by increased responsibility and shifting expectations. Research interpreted by historians at Cambridge suggests that children nearing adulthood were gradually entrusted with tasks that symbolized readiness for future roles. You sense this transition now in the way elders speak to you, their tone more measured, their gaze more direct. A curious footnote preserved in later commentary even describes youths being invited to join certain discussions previously reserved for mature members of the household. You find yourself standing beside your father as he converses with neighbours about harvest plans and trade routes. The words feel heavier than the simple instructions of earlier years. You listen, carefully aware that each detail may shape the path ahead. Oddly, yes. One scandalous aside in ancient lore tells of young people secretly yearning for adventures beyond the boundaries of their villages, imagining distant cities where life moves with unfamiliar rhythms. You feel a flicker of that same longing as you glance toward the pale ribbon of road stretching into the hills. The horizon calls softly, promising both opportunity and uncertainty. A mainstream historical observation drawn from research at Stanford notes that adolescence in this era often coincided with early commitments to labour marriage arrangements or apprenticeship. You spend the afternoon assisting in the repair of a neighbour's roof, climbing cautiously onto the rough surface. The texture of sun-warmed clay presses beneath your palms. Arguments split along different lines when historians consider whether such early transitions strengthened community cohesion or limited individual choice. You sense both truth and tension in the weight of new expectations. As the sun begins its descent, you walk alone toward the edge of the fields. The sky glows in deep shades of gold and crimson. You sit on a flat stone reflecting on memories that seem both distant and vivid. The games of childhood, the fear of illness, the thrill of festivals, the solemn hush of mourning. Each moment has shaped you, forming a quiet foundation beneath your growing sense of purpose. No agreement has been reached on whether ancient youths experienced this threshold as liberation or loss. You feel both emotions intertwining within you. There is pride in the strength you have gained. There is also a gentle sorrow for the simplicity that is slipping away. A curious footnote from philosophical writings even suggests that awareness of time's passage was considered a sign of spiritual awakening. You watch the shadows lengthen across the ground, recognizing that you are no longer standing at the same point in life as before. Evening gathers with a calm that feels almost sacred. Families light their lamps, their golden glow spreading across doorways like silent blessings. You join them for the final meal of the day, sharing bread and stories beneath a sky filled with stars. The conversation turns to future journeys, to hopes of stability and faith. You listen more than you speak, absorbing each word as though it were a lesson. Later you lie down on your mat, the woven fibres familiar yet somehow less comforting than in earlier years. Your thoughts travel across imagined landscapes, roads winding toward Jerusalem, markets filled with voices from distant lands, hills where teachers speak of renewal and justice. Sleep approaches, slowly carrying with it dreams of thresholds crossed and destinies unfolding. And now, as the night deepens and your breathing begins to soften, the pace of your memories gently slows. You feel the rhythm of your heart steady and calm. The dust of village paths settles like a quiet blessing. The scent of olive wood smoke fades into the cool darkness. You realize that childhood has not vanished entirely. It lingers in the stories you carry and the laughter that still echoes faintly within you. You allow your thoughts to drift across the landscape of your early years, the first light before sunrise, the taste of coarse bread, the distant song of festival drums. Each image glows softly like lanterns guiding you toward rest. The world beyond your village remains vast and uncertain, yet you feel a growing assurance that you will meet it with the resilience shaped by every trial and every joy. Your eyelids grow heavy. The stars above seem to draw closer, their gentle shimmer offering comfort. You breathe in the cool night air, letting tension dissolve with each slow exhale. Time moves forward with quiet inevitability, yet within this moment you find peace. The path ahead will reveal itself step by step. For now you rest between past and future, wrapped in the calm embrace of sleep. The final whisper of the wind brushes against your thoughts like a blessing. The journey of childhood has carried you to this threshold. Beyond it lies a life still waiting to be written. You drift into deeper dreams held by the steady rhythm of hope. Sweet dreams.